Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming to the Impact 5 Ocean Innovation and Technology Series. My name is Sabina Jessen. I'm Executive Director with the Impact 5 Secretariat. I've been working in ocean conservation for over 30 years, and I've been working on bringing Impact 5 to Canada since 2017, so I'm really thrilled that we're finally all together here in Vancouver. As we all move towards protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030, we will really need to use all the tools available to us to not only to reach the ambitious target, but to do it well by creating marine protected areas that really do the job in protecting the biodiversity of our global ocean. Our Ocean Technology Series takes place over 3 days. We had the first two of four panels yesterday. We have another 2 great panels here today, and we've brought companies from around the world who have developed technology from robotics to AI to eDNA, and I'm really hoping that MPA experts who are here, MPA experts and managers who are here at Impact 5 will really see how these technologies can be applied right now. We're also delighted tomorrow we'll be giving profile to 11 startups on the cutting edge of new technology who will pitch to our judges, and I encourage you as well to meet them in the Ocean Tech Hub here in the Ocean Expo, and I'm sure they'd be pleased to tell you about the work that they are doing. And I'd also like to encourage you to explore some of the exhibits of some of the companies who are here, and would be pleased to tell you about how they can work with you to protect your MPA. I'm deeply indebted to our 3 Impact 5 Ocean Innovation and Technology hosts who have been really instrumental in the design and delivery of this series. They've really used their global networks to bring together an amazing group of people, as you will hear during the panel. First of all, Justin Manley, who's in the audience, is a technologist and executive with experience in startup, public corporation, academic, and public sectors, and he is a current senior advisor to OceanKind and venture partners with AIIM Partners, and is an advisor to many ocean tech startups. Our second host is Eric Siegel, also in the audience. I saw you somewhere. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at Canada's Ocean Frontier Institute and an executive in residence at the Creative Destruction Lab. Our third host is Ron Tardif, who sadly was unable to join us here in Vancouver, and he is the acting lead on ocean innovation at the World Economic Forum. I can't thank them enough for their ongoing advice and encouragement in the development of this series. And as you'll see, I think, yes, on that slide, we've had a number of sponsors who are really excited to be part of this series. Allen AI, Creative Destruction Lab, Friends of Ocean Action, Innovate BC, MDA, the Ocean Frontier Institute, Ocean Startup Project, and Schmitt Marine Technology Partners. I really do appreciate their support for this series. So I'd like to invite Ted Schmitt, who is the moderator of Panel 3, to come to the stage for his opening remarks. Ted is the Senior Director of Conservation at the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Director of Skylight. Prior to that, Ted spent 15 years bringing technology to solve conservation problems. Really pleased to see you here, Ted. Thanks.
Thank you, Sabina. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we have a fantastic panel today, and I'm really excited to invite them up in a moment. One of the things that we in the technology space think a lot about is how you can scale solutions. And it's fantastic that at the Convention for Biodiversity, the 30 by 30 commitment was made, and there are a lot of people doing amazing work to figure out where those marine protected areas should go, how we should preserve them, what the rules should be, and all of that. And what we think about when we think about remote sensing is how vast these areas are. When you think about 30% of the ocean, I don't have off the top of my head how many square kilometers that is, but it's a lot. And so really the only way we can protect those, I wish everyone would just respect and love those boundaries and preserve everything, but we know that there are folks who have other motivations, and we really need to be able to use remote sensing to monitor and make sure that those areas are being complied with and that they're being preserved in the way that they're intended to be. And that's what the power of remote sensing brings. And so we're gonna hear today from the panelists. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but we're gonna hear first of all why this is important. We're gonna hear a couple of examples of how you deliver on that promise, and then we're gonna end with a Marine Protected Area Manager talking about what the reality on the ground looks like. And then the other theme that you'll hear today is about partnership and about how we all have to work together to understand the challenges we face, the opportunities we have, the technology we have, and then bring solutions that solve the problems we have. So we'll talk about that. So with that, I'm going to invite the panel up. Please join us. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just have our first panelist come right up and introduce yourself, and we'll get started right away.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this conference. My name is Dustin DeGagne. I'm a fishery officer and a senior compliance program officer with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada and our international compliance unit. And I'm here to speak today about some of the work that Canada has done to embrace these advancements in technologies in order to combat illegal fishing and protect marine protected areas. So, yep. Oh, just for the slide. Yeah. Do I have? Oh, okay. Okay, so Canada invested in the development of a platform called the Dark Vessel Detection Platform. We did this in 2019 in recognition of the threat that illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing was posing to marine biodiversity across the globe. We recognize that this threat is difficult for any one country to tackle adequately, and that we need to harness these technologies to be able to tip the balance in the fight against illegal fishing. What you can see here is just the vast expanse of waters of the North Pacific and the province of Ontario. For those who aren't Canadian are familiar with this, but it's roughly the size of France and Spain combined, 1 million square kilometers. Superimposed over the North Pacific Ocean, just to give people a better idea of what we're trying to accomplish here in monitoring these vast remote spaces. And there's very few enforcement assets on these waters. There may be a handful at any given time, and definitely not around the year. Just it's mainly done in conjunction with seasonal operations. So it's very sparsely patrolled, and there's a need to use these recent advancements in space-based technology, and that was the intent of the Dark Vessel Detection Program. Just further to that, to expand on the threat of the IUU fishing. IUU fishing represents a major threat to marine biodiversity. It's believed that 1 of every 5 fish was taken illegally. And for the economic impact that represents, it's believed to deprive global economies of $50 billion a year. So just to give better context to the problem we're trying to tackle here. Remote sensing. Previous to 2010, it was difficult to harness these space remote sensing technologies, but because it was mainly government launch satellites that were in use. However, from the mid-2010s on, with SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, and other commercial space providers, it enabled the space technology industry to develop to the point today where there's quite a few providers that are developing all sorts of new remote sensing technologies that we're able to incorporate into our Dark Vessel Detection Platform. This is how it looks for the platform that the Canadian government has developed. As you can see here, this is off the coast of Japan and the Kuril Islands and the Russian exclusive economic zone, there's massive industrial scale fleets that are active, and they number in the thousands, and they're pretty much persistent year-round. Most of them, or the majority of them, are using AIS transponders, automatic identification service, which enables governments to locate and monitor the activities of these vessels. However, what we sought to accomplish with this platform was to identify and monitor those vessels which we call dark vessels. Dark vessels are vessels which purposefully turn off their location transponders, and they are most likely to engage in illegal fishing or in other illicit activities. So that's the intent behind these technologies, to identify these vessels that we call dark vessels, that would be vessels that we would want to monitor, and especially when it comes to operationalizing whatever few assets we have, we want to focus on these dark vessels because there's a higher likelihood that they'd be engaged in illegal fishing. As we can see from here, where we can use AIS contacts. We've got synthetic aperture radar used from Canada's RadarSat constellation mission, Canada's government-owned radar constellation. We use visible infrared imaging radar from NOAA and NASA's constellation, as well as radio frequency data. And it's a layered technology that provides us with data that can be operationalized and provided to partner governments that we support. So yeah, just the further breakdown of the data that we're using and ingesting within this dark vessel detection platform. Radio frequency data. So if a vessel is active perhaps on their marine radio, if they're making satellite phone calls, if they're using maritime radar, there's about 4 radio frequency bands that are monitored. Lights, as you'll see with the squid fleet and the Pacific Sauri fleet, these fleets most often just fish at night, and they use lights to attract fish. So this is something which is actually quite handy for remote sensing, because these lights are visible from space, and we can monitor the activities of these fleets quite accurately just based on the emittance of light coming from these mass clusters of vessels. Optical imagery, which is a newer technology that we're using, enables us to get clearer, higher resolution images, to the point now where we can almost identify if a vessel is actively engaged in fishing activity, which is critical to be able to now get to the point where we may have enough, or the beginning of the sufficient evidence to prosecute or to build a case, because we can potentially now provide evidence of fishing gear being deployed once we get that established, which appears to be advancing quite quickly in recent years. And then it also incorporates VMS, so domestic fleets, vessel monitoring systems, and SAR. So this is an image that was captured from one of DFO's Fisheries aerial surveillance aircraft from one of our missions that we had flown in September of this year, kind of depicting the scale of the fishing activity and the lights emanating from these Pacific Sauri vessels on the high seas. Yeah, so it goes beyond just combating illegal fishing on the high seas. Canada has supported countries such as Ecuador to help them protect marine protected areas, the Galapagos Marine Reserve, the Hermandad Marine Reserve. A lot of countries do not have the resources to adequately patrol these with aircraft, with vessels. So there's a real dependence on harnessing these technologies to make best use of the assets that are available, and that's to direct patrols or perhaps to even direct targeting when those ships are able to come back to port. So it's a technology that is it's imperative for effective enforcement of these MPAs, and not only for illegal fishing, for other illegal activities which may be occurring, whether that's ship source pollution, seabed alteration, or maybe marine mammal disturbance in marine protected areas. So there's a myriad of applications for this technology in MPAs. And yeah, Canada is working to enable developing countries have access to this, as I've mentioned here, with Ecuador, Peru as well, and some of our partners in the South Pacific Islands. This technology provides multiple layers that can be operationalized because it's what we call near real-time data. It can be received from within 1 to 3 hours of actual capture time, so that can be actioned out in the field. And yeah, these investments in capacity that Canada has pursued for monitoring, control, and surveillance must keep pace with new protected areas and management regimes. And yeah, so as I say though, like this technology alone cannot solve the issue of illegal fishing or illegal extractive activities through these marine protected areas, but it does serve as a force multiplier to supplement other assets, whether that be vessels, patrol aircraft, or dockside monitoring once those vessels return to port. So, yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Quinn. I'm the Director of Geointelligence at MDA. MDA is Canada's leading space company of 53 years, and the Geointelligence division is headquartered here in Vancouver. I'm going to talk to you about MDA's Maritime Insights platform. This is the picture of the web-based portal. This is the system that Dustin and Canada, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, is using today. It's operational to monitor and combat illegal fishing globally. This is a screenshot of the portal. It's combining multiple satellite missions, as Dustin had indicated. Radar is the foundational sensor source used from space that provides the ground truth. Other satellite vendors MD has partnered with, such as radio frequency, optical, infrared, and other data layers are combined with the radar satellite to provide a maritime domain awareness picture that you can access on the Maritime Insights platform. Further, so this slide further explains on the left column, synthetic aperture radar detections. That's an image chip of a ship detected at sea from the radar satellite. To note about radar satellites is they can see through clouds and detect ships day or night. The radio frequency detection second column, MD has teamed and are providing a number of radio frequency space-based emissions, combining it with radar, the infrared VIIRS detection column, combining it with infrared detecting fishing vessel lights at night, and then optical, a number of space-based optical companies, all together producing a layered surveillance picture that can effectively monitor marine protected areas. This is an example of the web-based portal. With this, I wanted to highlight RadarSat is also effective to monitor oil pollution or bilge dumping from ships at sea. This picture in the middle, you'll see that purple area is actually indication of oil pollution from a ship. The top right is a image chip from RadarSat 2. So in addition to monitoring marine protected areas, space, in particular RadarSat, can be used to monitor the environment and identify any oil pollution or bilge dumping. MDA does offer a service that would alert a user to the possibility of any oil pollution that has occurred, and actually an ability to connect the oil pollution potentially to a ship or vessel who may have had a bilge dump or an accident. Again, so on this slide, obviously the yellow dots are all the ships detected. The bottom, I would highlight, there's a time slider scale, and actually hundreds and thousands of ships. You can move that time slider scale going back in time and get the historical track analysis of where the ships have been. In addition to using space to combat illegal fishing, monitor the environment for potential of oil pollution, you can also monitor the ocean ecosystem and health. The NASA NOAA VIRS IR satellites are layered into this system, and you're able to monitor the ocean health, and shown here as a chlorophyll ocean color, it's known as, showing chlorophyll concentration. Further, in the middle of this picture, you'll see a fishing vessel with lights on at night. MDA with advanced algorithms receives the remote sensing data from the NASA NOAA satellites. The lights detected turns it into a ship position report, Latin long based, layers it into the web-based system, combines it with RadarSat-2, which is on the left, and the infrared, which is on the right. General Ship Tracker, the name of the machine learning algorithm, the entire system that is combining all of the space sensors together and providing the geointelligence products to the user. In my opinion, this is the world-leading capability of its kind today, and altogether, I would estimate there are more than 50 satellites being used with 6 different sensor modalities, monitoring marine protected areas or combating illegal fishing, monitoring the environmental health, the ecosystem, and it's available for all users. That was my last slide, so I now want to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. Matt.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt Gummery and I'm on the development team at Global Fishing Watch. I'm going to be talking about the Marine Manager Portal. So, marine protected areas and area-based management generally is an essential tool in the recovery and protection of our ocean. But that management can often be hampered by inadequate access to data to support decision making. So failure to provide that data from those who produce it in useful formats to those who can use it can therefore lead to lost opportunities. We know that the ocean is vast, we can't see what happens at the ocean. It's very difficult, even with boats, to understand given the size we're working with. And just a decade ago, building an accurate picture of human activity at sea was impossible. But thanks to advances in satellite technology, in cloud computing, and in machine learning, Global Fishing Watch is making it a reality, along with our other organizations here today. So this data helps us build that picture and answer pretty basic questions. What's happening on the ocean? Where is it happening? And when is it happening? And that data can be used to inform policy, enforcement, and conservation efforts. Its general ability is really powerful in helping us understand trends in human behavior. Activity like the distant water squid fleet fishery moving up against the Galapagos exclusive economic zone every year, we can see that activity move up the coast and really push up against this boundary. However, this data is dynamic, it's always updating. We can see how it changes over time, and so we can detect changes in activity For example, in recent years, from 2021 onwards, we see now a buffer zone, a barrier between where that fishing is taking place and this national boundary. And that's thanks to lots of work from many different organizations who are focusing on this area through satellite data, through analytical reports, through collaborating with the Coast Guard. We can see and track this change, and we know that we're going to be able to track it into the future as well. And so we want to provide this data for everyone for free. And we've done that through the launch of Global Fishing Watch Marine Manager. Founded by Donna Bertarelli, Global Fishing Watch Marine Manager is an innovative technology portal that supports dynamic and interactive data on human use activity, on biology, oceanographic conditions, and maritime zoning. We've built it to support marine spatial planning, MPA design and management, and scientific research. In December, we released the public global version of this tool, and so anyone with an internet connection can log onto our website for free and access anywhere in the world and start to answer these basic questions. What's happening, where is it happening, and when is it happening? And as discussed by MDA, we have lots of different data sources that we can provide. Every single data set has its own kind of strange intricacies, its own benefits, and its own flaws. But the power is really when you combine them together, then you get the powerful impact and the information that will support our conservation efforts. So it's combining GPS-tracked fishing activity, dark vessel detection derived from some of the satellite data from partners like MDA. It's looking for fixed infrastructure like oil platforms and non-fishing activity like shipping and vessels associated with oil and gas development. Once you combine all of these different layers of information and understand their intricacies, then you can build this true picture of what's happening on our ocean, and you can measure it, and you can start to manage it and improve our impact on it. So this is all the data that we have available, but I'd like to just briefly take us back into the real world, into partnerships and people, because you can have all the data in the world, but it's only as good as the input and the people that are able to work with it. So I'd like to take us briefly to the mangrove-lined shores of Guyana. Guyana is based on the north of the South American coastline. And back in 2015, there was oil and gas research in Guyana and found opportunities for that development. And while that went ahead, the government in Guyana were quite worried about resources in their government department to deal with all of this new work that was required along the oil and gas development, and all of their other priorities, managing fishing, managing conservation efforts around the waters too. So as we started to develop Global Fishing Watch Marine Manager, we were put in touch, thanks to Dalhousie University, with Annette Arjun Martins from the Guyana Marine Conservation Society. And she immediately got the impact that the Marine Manager portal could have, being able to combine these different layers to start to build up a baseline of activity and environmental data in the region, in their waters, and see how it changes over time with these new developments. One area of importance was thinking about fishing. Not all vessels attract, but the Fisheries Department, with this kind of new extra work that they had, they're already an under-resourced department. How do they understand what fishing is happening and where fishing could be licensed with neighboring countries around their waters? So they were able to use a pretty simple functionality supported by the Marine Manager portal, and that is selecting an area, selecting a time range, which vessels were actively fishing in this area over this time. Can I download a list? But that then supports real diplomatic discussions between Guyana and their neighboring countries. Were these vessels licensed to fish here? Were they not? Can we enter negotiations or further discussions about how to better manage our resources and work with our neighboring countries? Unfortunately, the oil and gas development has resulted in a massive increase in vessel traffic off the coastline of Guyana, But we're able to track this now and to add information and understand how things are changing. So thanks to some collaboration between Global Fishing Watch, Dalhousie University, and the Guyana Marine Conservation Society, we were able to download this non-fishing data and provide a report to the Guyanese government explaining this increase and this change in activity over time related to this new development. So yes, we have all of these new technology opportunities, but they're only as good as the partnerships and the collaboration that ensure true operation and true action on the ground. And as a technology provider, we rely on you and your input to support our work, to help us to focus where we work and the tools that we can provide to you. So it's really fantastic to be at places like Impact 5, to have these conversations, to learn from you. So please come and share your inputs so we can make sure that we're continuing to harness this technology and make it as powerful as possible to ultimately advance ocean governance, increase transparency of human activity at sea, and help the recovery and protection of our ocean. Thanks very much.
Hi, my name's Dee Baum. I'm the Director of Conservation and Fisheries for the Ascension Island Government, and I'm here as a practitioner, someone who's actually using this technology. I think anyone who knew me would think it's hilarious that I'm on a panel about technology because I can barely use my mobile phone. But if you're a technology company, I'm the sort of idiot you need to make your projects accessible to. And if you're a marine manager, I hope it's reassuring that, if I can make it work, then anyone can. So just to let you know, Ascension, we're the sort of middle dot. We're right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We're a UK overseas territory, but we have our own independent government, of which I'm a part. We designated our MPA back in 2019, and it covers the whole of our EEZ, so out to 200 nautical miles from the island. As you can see, we're very remote. We're just south of the equator and about halfway between South America and Africa. You really can't get further from anywhere, and as you see, that makes it a real challenge to manage our MPA properly. So one of the key parts of our MPA is that we now don't allow any large-scale commercial fishing anywhere in our MPA. The only fishing that goes on at all in the MPA is very small recreational fishery very close to the coast. However, fishing still goes on around Ascension. So what you can see there is that's our MPA, our EZ. And then around that, Global Fishing Watch data, that is the fishing activity in the Atlantic. So this is all the tuna longline fleet of foreign flag vessels. They never come into Ascension. We don't see them. Nothing to do with Ascension or the UK. And they're operating just on our boundary. So in some ways, this is a really encouraging slide, because it shows that our boundary is generally being respected. We're not seeing much fishing within our MPA, but obviously it means there's a lot of activity just on the border. We'd love to extend protection beyond the boundaries of our MPA. I'm very keen to think about how to do that, but for the moment, what's really crucial is we make sure there's no illegal fishing going on within our MPA. It's what our MPA is for. That's the big change that was brought about by the designation. We want our MPA to be meaningful, so we have to make sure no fishing occurs. Sadly, I have a boat that can go out about a mile from the island. So we are entirely reliant on remote sense data. We have no vessels, no aeroplanes, we can't task anything. All our detection and compliance is done via remote data. Fortunately, we have some excellent partners we're working with. I am certainly not in control of this technology. So we've got Nick, where you've gone? You've just disappeared. Nick was sitting over there from Ocean Mind. Please tell him I credited him. So that's a private company that work with the UK government and provide surveillance data for the whole of the UK overseas territories. And then the Marine Management Organisation, who are a UK government agency that help us interpret the data. So the first thing we use is AIS. We've already talked about this, the automatic identification system that vessels use. And this can be very helpful. Shot on the right, you can just about make out that line, which is the boundary of our MPA. This was quite a recent incursion we had, just a vessel slipping over the border. they were still transmitting on AAS. OceanMinder running algorithms all the time, picking up any suspicious activity. That was flagged very quickly. Turned out the flag state had given all their vessels the wrong map. So they put their boundary in the wrong place. And that was resolved quite quickly. But it was really encouraging how quickly that was picked up. The other use of AAS data, it helps us understand the general pattern of the fleet behavior. And this is something Chris Kerry, who's also sat over there, is working with the University of Exeter to do an analysis of how the fishing fleet's behaving in the ocean around Ascension. Are there any predictors of where they go based on oceanographic variables? That helps us get one step ahead because often those illegal vessels are nestled within the legal fleet. And if we know where they're distributed, it helps us target that's more intense surveillance activity. So that kind of analysis is really useful for us to use our resources more widely. So AAS is a really good starting point for us. But as we've discussed from the other panelists, obviously those real, illegal vessels are often not transmitting, certainly at the point they're behaving illegally. So we also use synthetic aperture radar. We can't do this all year round, but we target, based on our analysis of AAS, the time and the place where we're most likely to see any illegal activity. This picks up, this is how I think of it in my mind, it basically detects big metal things on the water. And if we see big metal things on the water that are not transmitting on AAS, it's a cause for suspicion. So again, you can see some of the pictures from the Ascension MPA. We don't get very many of these undetected correlations. So where you're seeing something on the radar, but not picking up on AAS, which is very encouraging again. It suggests we're not getting very many suspicious vessels in our MPA. We do get some, and then we look into it more deeply, see if we can pick up the tracks of those vessels. Are they displaying fishing activity? There's really good algorithms now to distinguish between a vessel that's just plowing on through in transit to ones that are actually engaging in fishing. Can even start to distinguish between different types of fishing, long lining versus purse seining, for instance. And so we can get some really good information. If we do detect any suspicious vessels, we try to get an optical image. I'm really keen to talk to Ted about this because his images look a lot better than mine. That's what I get. I've been told the one on the left is a fishing vessel, and the one on the right is more of a tanker. It does, though, give you reassurance that that's probably a vessel. It's not a cloud, it's not a glitch in the machine, so we definitely are sure there's a vessel there. Obviously, as you've seen, better photos already. The technology is there, and key thing is doing it in real time, so we can get those optical images really quickly after we detect an uncorrelated detection. I guess the issue for us is now going on to enforcement activity. As I said, we don't have any assets, we don't have planes or boats, and that makes life very difficult. This is brilliant technology when you can task something to go out to that area and check it out, take enforcement action, boots on deck, as you put it. We can't do that. So the next step for us is making sure we can actually use remote sensing to provide a real deterrent and a real enforcement capability. That's probably going to be linked to tracking vessels into port states. Often illegal vessels do switch on their AAS later. They have to when they're getting into port, or they transship. If we can keep track of those vessels that are behaving illegally, then possibly we can take action there. But that is a bit more of a step. It's something we've not tested it yet. At the moment, as we said, compliance is quite high. We haven't had to take many incidents further, but that's something that I do think we need to test and develop in the future. But as I said, our MPA couldn't function without the technology that these guys have produced. It would be meaningless. There's no point banning fishing if you can't check on that, if you can't enforce it. And we are getting to the point where technology allows us to do that, even in the middle of the ocean, thousands of kilometers from land. So it's a real game changer for us. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Really fascinating talks, and appreciate all the insights you provided. I'm going to start, actually I'm going to just see if there are any burning questions out in the audience that anyone wants to offer. We have some time for Q&A. If we don't have any immediate questions from the audience, I'll start with something. Oh, we do? There we go. Hold on, we're going to...
Hi, first I wanted to thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I just have a question about enforcement and what does that mean and what needs to be done and whether there's any teeth to it. So, are there any sanctions? What are sort of the follow-up steps? Thank you.
You want to take that?
Okay. So I agree that that is probably the difficult part. So, well, all of it was difficult. We've solved the first steps. This is probably the one we're still working on a little. From our point of view, when we find issues, say like that example I showed where there was an incursion that we could pick up on AAS, obviously that vessel was transmitting its name, its flag state. We could then get in touch with the flag state and raise concerns through them. They then take action on their flag vessels. That worked very well in that case. It does depend a lot on the flag state, what kind of cooperation you get. If we get no cooperation from the flag state, they can obviously impose sanctions on their fleet. If we get no cooperation from a flag state, then we can go to the Regional Fishery Management Organization. In our case, it's ICAT in the Atlantic. Try and escalate things to the point of blacklisting a particular vessel. Obviously, that's only if we know the vessel name and only if we've got good data, real strong evidence. For the dark vessels, it's much harder. I don't think we're there yet. And as I said, I can only talk for Ascension. We've not had many incidents that we've had to take to that level. I think the hope and certainly in the short term is that maybe port state measures, as I said, if we can track those vessels. There's not this clear distinction between illegal vessels and legal vessels. They often kind of, they'll be licensed, they'll be behaving legally and then take a chance by just popping into our MPA. So they may then go back outside and put their AAS back on again. If we can track that, then we've got the vessel identification and we can follow that flag state route. We can even, or if the flag state's not cooperating, ICAT or maybe the port state that they go to offload their fish. If we can't work out what that vessel is, it is much more difficult. Yeah.
Can I just add something? So
Please.
On the issue, I guess, with fishing in satellite maps that's detected through machine learning is that machine learning process is happening all the time, so it's quite hard to use that data for particular, prosecution of a vessel. But one really useful aspect of it is to look for these trends in behavior and see if you can influence them in other ways. So an example is using, for example, apparent fishing effort data and then applying algorithms to see if conservation management measures at RFMOs are being adhered to. So an example is, night setting to reduce seabird bycatch is one example of a conservation management measure. We can use all of this data and look at massive ocean areas and see, is that conservation management measure being adhered to? And then take that information forward to RFMO discussions and see if we can influence larger scale changes in behavior that then mean we don't have to get to enforcement, hopefully.
Right. Any other? She's got a follow-up.
Yeah, this is just so interesting. So my follow-up is always the concern about safety, terrorism, all the good that it does can also be used to cause further havoc and problems. Is this something that it's going to expand on in terms of, protection of sort of unwanted or unintended consequences and possibility of ocean terrorism? So just wanted to see if I can hear some comments on that. Thank you.
I would just say that when we actually designated our MPA, there was a discussion about whether to have an MPA or whether to manage a fishery in our EEZ. And one of the things was that, well, then we can, require observers. We can require them to come into Ascension. We can check, that their human rights on board, that their kind of employee status. We decided to go for an MPA, but as you're right, what we're pushing out now is some things into the high seas where there is no law, and we know terrible practices go on. And I think that's something we need to be aware of, that if we push areas out of EEZs, we need to think of how we police the high seas, not just for conservation, but for protecting the people that work in these industries as well. It is a real concern. I mean, it's possibly off topic a little, but I think one of the key things is to make sure we keep doing this surveillance. It's not something you do once and leave it. The risk to Ascension, I can only talk for Ascension, is quite low at the moment. That could change at any time, as they feel that maybe our enforcement isn't good enough, or things change, economics change, as you say, the actual illegal actors in this field just get more bullshit and try things. This is organized crime, and we need to recognize that.
Please, Robert.
Thank you. Hi, Ellen. I want to thank you for your great questions. So I just want to make a comment about the use of space, both first and second question. So obviously space is not an enforcement arm of these activities. However, it is a queuing and provides the information geointelligence products to the authorities who may wish to do those things. The second, so the answer or comment on the second question. The monitoring of marine protected areas or illegal fishing is actually part of maritime awareness. And there's a spectrum to maritime domain awareness, whether it's defense and security, illegal fishing, criminal activities, counter-piracy, counter-narcotics, all is one. There's a spectrum to that, a linear spectrum, and they're actually connected. Many of us who are in that field know that. However, going back to the original part, the role of space is really a queuing and provides the information products to those authorities like Dustin. I'd actually like to cue to Dustin to make a comment because he's an enforcement person.
Mm-hmm. And I just would like to add there as well that in a lot of countries, it's actually the Navy that is responsible for monitoring illegal fishing and responsible for the protection of marine protected areas. So as to the broader applications of this technology, it's definitely being employed to counter drug smuggling and other illicit activities which are known to exploit commercial foreign fishing vessels, foreign flag vessels, and synonymous with certain sectors of the industrial fishing fleet. So it does have wide-ranging and broad applications beyond illegal fishing and marine protection. Yeah.
So I think one thing I wanted to point out here, I mentioned partnerships in my opening comments. We have a country, Canada, who's providing technology and expertise to partner countries in various places around the world. We have an amazing technology company that's pushing the state of the art of the technology in space and delivering that. We have an NGO that is using that data and technology to inform the creation and monitoring and management of the MPAs. And then we have a practitioner. And so I think I really like the composition of the panel because it represents the teamwork and partnership that we have to have all the way through. And in fact, reflective of the discussion we've just been having is it's an end-to-end thing. You want to get stuff as early as you can. I think Matt made that point, but there are things that go all the way out to the end. And you have to take it all the way into the legal process sometimes. I mean, the earlier you can get things, the better, but you have to be all the way through if you want to have a real deterrent effect. The solutions, and there's amazing technology solutions out there, but they have to really be focused on the problems. They have to be deeply informed by the problems. And I think, having a manager here, having, the folks at Fisheries and Oceans, helping be that translation between the managers and the technologists is really helpful. And of course, Global Fishing Watch plays that role. You mentioned Nick and Ocean Mine. Having those experts go in and really help sit with you and understand what's going on. All of that is part of the ecosystem. And that's more of a comment than a question, but I'd invite any of you to sort of add on to thoughts you have to that.
Well,
please.
the point you made yesterday, Ted, that's important as well is that we're all working together. Like every stage of the journey and all the tech providers as well. We know that we have these different parts of the puzzle that work together best when they're combined. And so MDA sharing radar sat data with Global Fishing Watch, Skylight and Global Fishing Watch working together in certain countries, along with Ocean Mind as well. Global Fishing Watch and Ocean Mind working with Ascension. Ensuring that we have these conversations and continue to work together and collaborate is essential, and to try and take the burden and the work off the managers and the people on the ground as well and make their work as easy as possible, I think is really important. And so it's great that we're all here and working together.
Yeah,
Robert?
Sure. Thank you, Ted. So the thought I wanted to share with you is that so the monitoring of marine protected areas is a team sport. And many of you are aware the British Columbia government and federal government announced the networking of marine protected areas here off the British Columbia Pacific coast in September. So I view this as so maritime domain awareness, monitoring marine protected areas, using space is a team sport, and we're all networked to achieve that. And it really takes a large group of organizations and people to do that. And Ted, and as well, I wanted to thank you for your leadership that you've been involved in this, Global Fishing Watch and Canada, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and all of you for your passion on doing this. So yeah, just the buzzword is it's a team sport, and we're all in it together. So.
You know, Robert, we've been talking to the folks in the Caribbean also and trying to figure out how we empower the local folks with the technology. We'll see where that goes, but I think it's just, you know, the oceans are so vast, we have to figure out different creative ways to work together. And I know I've interacted with every one of you. Great to meet you as well. On how we as technologists, I think that point's made over and over again as part of this series is technology doesn't replace, in fact, Dustin, you said it doesn't replace the boots on the deck. I like that because I'm used to talking about boots on the ground, but boots on the deck. And really making sure that we're quite humble, proud of our technology and what we can do, but humble about it as well and making sure it's actually solving problems. Let me see if there's any more questions in the, oh, we have a question here.
Thank you. Awesome presentations, thanks very much. I'm Moritz from Starboard Maritime Intelligence, and I have a question in a bit general. Justin and Robert have shown some amazing technology, and that involved several remote sensing technologies all working together to provide more and more detailed information on vessels at the surface of the ocean. And the optical images, which we all love because we know what we see, are really beautiful. And then, of course, Diane showed something that looked a little bit different. and honestly, that's a little bit more aligned with my own experience as a remote sensing scientist. And just to be clear, those high-resolution images have a spatial scale of tens of kilometers. So you actually need to know really well where you take that image. And then, if you're lucky and you have no clouds, then you can see what you're looking for. But I'm wondering, from the technology side, and especially MDA's experience, how far away are we from sort of the tip and cue idea that we have about taking an area of interest that we know from AIS data that it's a high-risk area, and we send a RadarSat-2 acquisition of it, which has a much larger footprint, so it's great for looking at bigger ships, and then cueing an optical image. That works as a case study in many cases, but how far away are we to having this operational for the end user?
Yeah, first off, great comment and question, and really accurate, right? So a couple comments I wanted to mention. Certainly we're aware of the limits of space optical. It needs to be cloud-free. and the resolution, as you mentioned. So radar satellites are foundational, as you're aware, all weather day, night. So that's the foundational layer. The next comment is it's all layered surveillance. However, and including weather. So is there, when I listened to your comment, I took from it, is there automatic queuing between these different satellite missions, taking into account, for example, well, there is, it's cloud in this area, therefore a queue to an optical mission isn't really going to be worthwhile and it's wasted. And I know Dustin and we're having that experience. So we are having that experience when we queue from RadarSat 2, attempt to get an optical image on a vessel, on a dark vessel, and more often than not, it's cloud and you get nothing out of it. And then on a lower percentage time, you get an optical image. So I'm aware there's a technology there where, so if you layer in a weather prediction, knowing that the optical image just isn't going to happen, and it also emphasizes the importance of the layered surveillance, because then radio frequency can provide a fingerprint identification, automatic identification system as well. So it's all together, and no single sensor can do it all. There's no question. Ideally, the next generation is really what you were suggesting on the technology, is that there's an automatic queuing between these different satellite missions and collection systems. Really doesn't exist currently. It's a progression to that, where the platform and systems queue a position to a different company with an owner, a different satellite, and a different collection management system. So that automation needs to happen, taking into account weather. That's definitely the next frontier. And I know we all share the same experience attempting an optical image. I know Dustin has had that experience a number of times.
Yeah, I think we're just on the cusp of realizing the full potential of that. Like when we are in certain cases, but because of certain factors that Robert has mentioned, it's not reliable as SAR would be at this stage. However, it does yield other information that we cannot obtain through SAR, through VIIRS, such as like the obviously high resolution of maybe depicting the activities. Perhaps you see a purseine out, or you can actually see activities like surrounding the transshipment between vessels, and it can lend itself to provide evidence for potential prosecutions. And we've been experimenting with it in recent weeks. Even just last week in the Galapagos Island, there was reports of illegal fishing going on. We were able to successfully capture images of dark vessels in one of the islands, and we're able to download that into the DVD system for the monitoring center there to use. And one key benefit I see to EO, to optical imagery, is the ability to capture images of artisanal smaller scale vessels that you cannot pick up from synthetic aperture radar, because that's one of the limitations we've seen with SAR, is that you're looking at vessels that are 15, 20 meters and greater, whereas with EO, you can get vessels that are 3 meters, small artisanal vessels. It's amazing what can be detected and gleaned from some of these shots. So the other aspect is whether you're looking for like a static image or a dynamic image, or actually trying to capture an image of a suspect vessel. We have been able to do this in recent months as well, but it's definitely not consistently reliable. It depends if the course is constant. And in the case of fishing vessels, often that isn't the case. They're erratic behavior, and it's hard to predict where that vessel will be in 3-4 hours later when that satellite's doing a pass. But when it comes to marine protected areas, especially if they're smaller scale, based on the size of these footprints, or I don't know, depending on the various providers, 5 by 10 kilometers or 10 by 10 kilometers, you can almost cover large swaths of MPAs. And given that they're static areas, I do see a real benefit in that for smaller scale activity. Yeah, and it can be downloaded and available to the end user like within 4 hours, I would say. Yeah, potentially.
Thank you. I know we're pretty much hitting our time here. I am going to tease a little bit. I showed some things in a panel yesterday. We've actually moved from, for Skylight, we've moved from a case study to actually getting pretty close with AIS. We'd love to get there with SAR. Hope to talk to MDA a lot more about that. But we've actually got it to, we're getting images about 1 in 9 times. We're getting quick turnarounds. We've actually connected up API to be able to queue Maxar satellites off the AIS we're getting from Spire. And we are getting to about 1 in 9 times we're getting, and we're getting extremely high resolution images from the worldview stuff. So I'll just tease it there and thank the panelists for tremendous presentations and all the Q&A. Really appreciate it. I'm sure they'd be happy to follow with any of you afterwards. Thank you all.
Thank you.